Hello, everyone. This is Piero San Giorgio. Today, I'm very happy to have on the show Mr. Tiwari, who is a student in law and in finance as well, and an Indian patriot. So, which part of India do you live?
I'm from central India, but I live on the east shore. I'm from Kolkata.
Okay, and because
Yeah.
for those who may not know, India is it's a very large country.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, in my channel, as I explained you before, I talk about economic collapse and how people can
Perfect.
react, how countries can react to try to minimize the impact of
Yeah.
that. Now, I've traveled almost everywhere in the world, but I must say that unfortunately, I did not have the pleasure and chance to travel and visit India. So
Oh,
I am ignorant, although I do have studied Indian history, and I
yeah.
am passionate about military history. So obviously, I studied a lot
That's
Indian armed forces and
awesome.
very powerful and very um, great tradition over history. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about, maybe for my audience who doesn't know India as well, how is the status? What is a lot of things happened in India recently with elections, and
Yeah.
how is India in the 21st century?
Basically, the 21st century, you can call it the transition phase of India. And it's quite interesting because culturally, we are going back to our roots, and statistically and economically, militarily, we are advancing forward. So, you see, this is an interesting period. Ever since PM Modi came to power in 2014, he has been stressing on Hindu nationalism, that is Indian nationalism with Hindu roots. He is basically challenging globalism. And you see, economically, we are undergoing some strict and rigorous reforms that's also happening on the military side. So you can say that it's a very important phase, not just for India, but also for the world, because whatever happens to 1.3 billion people will impact the world.
So if we start with demographics and geography, which is the
Yeah,
first and most important thing in every country. So as you said, 1.3 billion people. I believe the growth has actually pretty much stopped. Is that
yeah.
correct? So you have a
But it hasn't stopped to such an extent that, yeah, it has stopped, but not to such an extent that our population will stabilize. It will keep growing till around 2040, and we will obviously overtake China in the next 3 or 4 years.
okay, and so you have one of the largest population, the second largest population of the world
Yeah,
today. How is the education and following? And obviously, everyone knows about the very high educated Indian tycoons and the engineerings
yeah.
and the IT specialists, but the general people, how is that coping? Has it
Yeah.
improved over the last 50 years?
So I'll neither be too optimistic and neither be too pessimistic. See, I'll be honest with you. Ever since independence, our education literacy rate it has improved significantly, but not to such an extent that we are on the same stage with European countries, for example. We are still a developing nation, not like Africa and neither like Europe. We're in the middle. So earlier, our education literacy rate was around 12% when we got independence, but now we have it around 78%. So that is pretty much a significant gain. And the main problem with Indian education is the system that the government has not been able to create a sound environment for studies. You see, the Indians who move abroad, they move abroad because they don't feel that their talent is much valued over here. Those who get highly educated, they either grow abroad, and those who just, we see that the mediocre ones stay back home. Yeah,
Okay, and as far as the geography, of course, you have many different kinds. You have the Ghats, you have the big plain with the rivers in the north,
yeah.
and the desert in the west. How how is this impacting? Everybody talks about climate change and things like that.
Yeah.
Especially for water, do you see impacts? Do you see changes in India weather and geography, or not so much?
Climate change has not been much of an issue, but yeah, recently, ever since the industrialization, post-industrialization, India has seen some significant drop in water level, groundwater level, mostly in the western part of India and in the southern part of India. You see, we are a peninsula surrounded by seawater from three sides, but we still have a drinking water problem. We have the Himalayas on the north, but the southern part of India has a serious water crisis. So that has to be addressed some point in the future.
Yeah.
And our geography is quite complex. You see, we have marshes and swamplands in the east. We have mountains on the north and in the east, and we have desert in the west, and we have sea and oceans in the south. So we have pretty much of everything, but that's also a complex situation to manage.
And of course, how do you say, the economy of the agriculture economy is very dependent on water, because this is how you grow food. And I know that in the past, where there was a lot of export agriculture, cotton, very, very heavy consumption of water. How is it today?
It's still not much developed, sir. You see, the problem with India is the problem of scaling. If you take Netherlands for an example, Netherlands is such a small country that it's around the size, it's just more than the size of Mumbai, which is the largest city in India. But Netherlands is actually the food capital of the world right now. The Dutch people, you see, they produce more food, but if you compare it directly with India, we don't have much efficient technology which we use to develop to grow food. You take India for example, like you take onion for example. India has a population of 1.3 billion people, but if it were to use the resources effectively, we would never have vegetable or grocery shortage. We have to import our food grains even from outside, so that's quite a big problem. Agriculture has still is still a problem for us. I don't think it will go anytime soon, because our politicians are not in the mood to address it. Even the farmers, you see, if you compare it with the USA, farmers are vote bank for politicians everywhere. Farmers are appeased by politicians, but no one is willing to address the real problems. Farmers don't have the technical know-how. They don't know how to do scientific and technical agriculture. They are still doing. They still adapt the techniques which are followed in the 1960s and 50s. So efficiency is quite a big problem when it comes to agriculture.
Mm-hmm. And besides agriculture, what are the big industries of India today?
You see, the biggest industry in India right now is the service sector. And by service sector, the biggest contributor is the IT sector. Even 70% of USA's IT's needs are fulfilled by Indians. So you can tell an automobile, automobile, we have the fourth largest automobile industry. We have a pretty significant population of doctors and engineers. You see, a professional population. And after that, we have this agriculture. We are the second largest producer of food grains, but we still have untapped resources. We have like the largest. We have the largest resource of thorium. So we have we have a diverse economy. Yeah.
Okay, and you mentioned politicians.
Yeah.
For many years, when I was a child, of course, there was still the Gandhi dynasty ruling. Well, of course, it's a democracy, but they were elected on and on. I think it was the Indian National Congress Party, and
absolutely.
And now, of course, you have a different kind of more economic liberal, more free market oriented, it seems, but also in a way much more nationalistic, which of course I kind of like. But can you tell us a little bit about the challenges of Indian politics today?
You see, the party which governs India today, the BJP, it is headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. His policy is clear. Economically, he is much more of a capitalist than any other Indian politician. The Indian National Congress was a socialist party.
Yeah.
And even though they were socialist, they were fully globalist. They did not like nationalism one bit. And Modi's policy is clear. He's a Hindu nationalist. He wants India to go back to its roots, but go ahead with a steady development. So this is pretty much what it is. And what happens when two ideologies clash is, you see this. I think, see, Indian National Congress, they have been downfalling. They have been on a downfall ever since 2003, because India's population is mostly nationalist. We are nationalists by our nature. So they had imposed their rule upon us. You can say that they were pretty much dictatorial. They were dictators, and they had this dynasty. You see, first Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister of India. He was the friend of Mahatma Gandhi. Then his daughter Indira Gandhi became the Prime Minister. Then his son Rajiv Gandhi. And then his family still holds a significant influence on our national politics. So this is what Indians hated about them, and we kept them on a side, and we elected Modi because he represents much more. He understands the value of nationalism. That's what he represents.
In India, you have a large population of Muslims. The majority is Hindu, of course, in terms of religion and ethnicities. Within Hindus, you have different castes, and I think you have also a minority of Buddhist people. If we take the biggest,
we also have Christians and Sikhs,
and Christians.
Yeah.
The Muslim population obviously is very much linked to Pakistan and I guess Bangladesh on the other side. And recently, at least, there were some of course, there used to be wars in 1974, and there was a lot of terrorist attacks. 71.
Yeah.
And then there was some tensions. There are tensions right now in Kashmir. How is the population, especially the Muslim minority, how is it managed? Does it create problems? Is it okay? General? We don't really know very much about it in the West, how it plays within Indian politics.
So to understand this current scenario, you have to go back to history. Let me take you back to 1947 when our country got independence. You see, India was a secular nation ever since its beginning. You see, the Pakistan was created on the idea that Hindus and Muslims should not live together, and they cannot live together. The founder of Pakistan was Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He asked the British to grant them a separate country where the Muslims could live apart from Hindus. And that's what, when the British left, they created Pakistan. And essentially Bangladesh was also a part of Pakistan. Bangladesh was liberated in 1971. And in Pakistan, you see the dilemma here is Pakistan had a Hindu population of around 10% when it got independence. And today, the Hindu population of Pakistan is less than 3%. And compare this with India. In contrast, India had around 6% Muslims when we got independence. But now we have 14% independence. So that's an 8% increase in our Muslim population. Whereas the Hindus and Christians have been absolutely eliminated in Pakistan. So Indian Muslims, I can say that they are pretty much peaceful and they connect with India. But there is a significant portion of Indian Muslims who lean towards the ideology of Pakistan's founder, and that's a significant issue for us. We have to address that problem, because if a large part of the Muslim population in your country, they tend to be anti-nationals, you have to deal with them.
And of course, Kashmir is a focal point of that.
Yeah, Kashmir is a point of tension ever since 1947. You see, India being a Hindu majority country, Kashmir is a rare case. It's the only Muslim majority state in India. In 1947, Kashmir was neither a part of India, neither a part of Pakistan. So Kashmir was an independent state. The British, when they left India in 565 states. So what we have to do was, we collected all these states, we brought them together, our leaders, they made this gigantic country that you call India today. But Kashmir, they did not agree to sign a treaty with us, and they were a sovereign state. But in late 1947, Pakistani army, along with some Afghanistani soldiers and some terrorists, they attacked the Kashmiri kingdom. And the rare case here is, the Kashmiri population was Muslim, but it was ruled by a Hindu ruler. He neither wanted to be a part of India nor Pakistan. So when he was attacked by Pakistani forces, he came to New Delhi for help, and he asked the government of India to intervene. He said he is willing to join the Republic of India and be an Indian state if India lends help to the people of Kashmir in driving away Pakistanis. So in 1947, there was this war with Pakistan, when India stepped in and we drove away Pakistanis, and Kashmir in return became a part of India. So that's what's irritating Pakistanis till this date. They still claim that India has illegally annexed Kashmir by illegally bringing its forces to the Kashmir Valley and driving the Pakistani forces out of there. And India, we believe, and it's obviously legal, that Kashmir is an integral part of India. We have a treaty signed with the king of those times, Maharaja Hari Singh, which was the prerequisite. Our Kashmir being a sovereign part of India was the prerequisite of our lending help to them. So this has been going on for more than 7 decades. It has reached the United Nations, and I don't think it's going to resolve anytime soon, because Pakistan is not going to give up its claim on Kashmir, and neither is India. Kashmir is India's integral part, but Pakistan has been pushing on Kashmir because they don't have anything else to feed to their people. That's why they keep feeding this propaganda that Kashmir is a Muslim state and India has illegally been crushing those Muslims, and India has been crushing the human rights. India is an aggressor. That's what they're doing.
Now, of course, Kashmir is very strategic also because it has a lot of water, source water, for the many rivers of the region. And it's obviously very, very important to keep either for India to keep it or for Pakistan to try to control it, because a lot of water comes, and whoever cuts the water has a big strategic pressure on the other. So obviously it's important.
Not just for the water. You see, Kashmir is the only Indian state which borders Afghanistan.
Also.
See, Kashmir is also connected with Afghanistan. So it is also strategically important for the United States. Because if you Google, you'll find out that there's a part of Kashmir, it is called Gilgit-Baltistan, which is under illegal Pakistani occupation. It borders Afghanistan. And most of the terrorists, you see, Osama bin Laden's Al-Qaeda, it was born in the Kashmir, in the part which borders Kashmir. See, that is also a very strategically important place for USA and rest of the world. Because if USA wants peace in Afghanistan, it has to ensure that Pakistani terrorists don't use occupied Kashmir to spread terrorism elsewhere. And we also have Kashmir bordering China. So you see, Kashmir is a tri-junction point. It borders 4 countries and very vital for this Asia-Pacific region.
As China is developing the new Silk Roads, Kashmir is also probably a way for India to connect through the Central Asian states to Russia and to Europe with a land bridge in a way. And now, of course, very unique with India and Pakistan is both have nuclear weapons, both have nuclear powers, and both have a significant armed forces. Even if India, of course, has vastly larger and many experts say vastly higher quality. You have aircraft carrier for many decades. You have nuclear powered submarines. You have armed forces that not many countries in the world can manage to have this level of quality. So,
absolutely.
But nuclear weapons are, of course, very dangerous because they can destroy large parts of countries. And what is today's current state of risk or doctrine for possible nuclear exchange within these 2 countries? What is the and maybe, I don't know if it's a bit technical, but what is the doctrine of using nuclear weapons for India, or at least what is the official stand for that?
Okay, let me give you an overall brief picture of our India's nuclear policy. You see, India has maintained a clear policy of no first use. We have said that we will never use nuclear weapons first in any war unless we are attacked. You see, Pakistan has no such policy. They say that if they are attacked, they can use nuclear weapons. But India has said that they will never use nuclear weapons first. You see, India's nuclear weapons was not developed keeping in mind the threat from Pakistan. We had developed nuclear weapons keeping in mind the threat from China, because China was constantly developing nuclear weapons and conducting nuclear tests. And so to keep China at bay, we had to do something. And that's when we developed nuclear weapons. And then China, you see, if you Google it, you will find every detail about it. China helped Pakistan in developing nuclear weapons. Basically, Pakistan is a proxy state of China, which China uses to keep India busy in conflict while it manages to go ahead. This has been the China policy since 1960. China has been arming Pakistan with Chinese weapons, Chinese aircrafts, and Chinese ships, and even Chinese nuclear weapons. The Pakistani nuclear program was developed with the help of Chinese scientists. So India's nuclear policy is clear, but we will be compelled to use nuclear weapons if and only if we are attacked by nuclear weapons. But I don't think that any country is going to use nuclear weapons against India, keeping in mind the sanctions that USA might impose on them. And the world community is strictly against nuclear war right now.
Of course.
So this is pretty much what it is,
Of course, we certainly hope that it never happens within anywhere. Now, you mentioned China, which is very interesting, is that it seems to me, and you can tell us more, that the relationship between China and India has warmed, are much better today than they used to be.
You see, China and India's relationship is quite complex. It is a mixture of competition and collaboration. And an imbalance of either of these two will lead to conflict. You see, we are one of the largest importers of Chinese goods, if not the largest. and China is our biggest trading partner. But at the same time, China is our enemy number one, because China has been aiding Pakistan and even other states like Bangladesh to an extent to keep India busy in conflicts. So to maintain China, we have to do monkey balancing. We have to be a partner and even an enemy of China at the same time. So diplomacy comes here when diplomacy comes here to maintain a peaceful relationship with China. In 1962, we had a war with China. We went to war. Of course, we lost that war, but it's been more than 50 years now, and not a single bullet has been fired between India and Chinese soldiers. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And recently, China has been engaging in these expansion activities. They are building the modern Silk Roads, what you call the Belt and Road and the One Belt One Road initiative. They have been doing it with the help of Pakistan and other regional players here. But India has strictly stayed away and said that India will not join any such China-sponsored program which aids China's national interest but is against India's national interest. So India and China maintain a pretty, a hostile yet a friendly relationship.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the big economical and political partners of India has been Russia, and before Soviet Union. Is the relationship still very good with Russia?
India's relationship with Russia has grown stronger by the year. But I think going forward, India is definitely going to lean towards America.
Mm-hmm.
Because ever since the collapse of Soviet Union, we had to make two choices. We had to make one choice, either Russia or USA. And gradually, we are moving towards USA. You see, most of our armaments to this date, even our artillery, are Soviet era artillery, Soviet era weapons. But USA's policy is clear. They want to use India as an offshore balancing partner, which they want to use to project against China. You see, India's democracy comes here, and India's democracy is its main strength, its biggest strength. USA wants to maintain a balance of power in the South Asia region. USA does not want China to dominate the rest of the world. And so even NATO and Europe, they are helping India to become a superpower in this region to help counter the threat from China and China's expansion. So, and this is why Russia's relationship with India comes here. It is important because Russia, if you know that China and Russia have been growing stronger, the relationship is growing stronger by the second. And China's influence on Russia is growing and growing right now as we talk. So to maintain a healthy relationship with USA, we have to cut our relationship with Russia and go towards USA. That's what we are doing. And recently we have signed multiple billion-dollar deals with USA, multi-billion-dollar deals with USA, be it defense or energy or trade or even cybersecurity. So India is moving towards USA, but we still have a healthy relationship with Russia. And most of our arms equipments and energy needs are fulfilled by Russian intelligence.
So India is
Russian expertise.
So India is very well integrated in the globalized economy, of course. As you said, has increased relationships with America, with the United States.
Yeah.
And of course, this leads me to my question. In fact, my books, I know there's a lot of readers of my books, of the English version of my books in India.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of feedback from people in India who read my books. Now, what if this globalized economy falls down? What if we have a major economic crisis, energy and resource scarcity? Actually, by the way, where does India buys its oil mostly from?
Our oil mostly used to come from the Middle East. You see, Iran particularly, but
Mm-hmm.
USA has stepped in and said that India needs to curb its oil purchases from Iran, and they are willing to help us with oil purchases from Saudi Arabia and other allies of USA. But India has to keep its national interest first. Iran has even said that they will give oil to us at half the price that USA is providing. So that's still a negotiation that's going on. India has still been buying oil from Iran. We are still buying oil from Iran, and they are our largest oil suppliers. And then we have Saudi Arabia, of course, and Saudi Arabia has recently made a $75 billion investment in Indian oil companies. So Saudi Arabia and Iran are two main sources of our oil.
Okay. So what if this, for whatever reason, oil stops and the global economy is certainly reduced, or as I say in my books, what if it collapses? is India able to be self-sufficient in terms of food, energy? How do you think such a, of course we don't hope for this, it's a disaster scenario. If such a scenario would happen, how would India manage its own economy, its own population?
That's an ongoing process. You see, in 2016 or 2017, Prime Minister Modi and President Macron of France, they started this international solar alliance, keeping in mind the threat that the world will see once the oil economy collapses. And we are pushing towards a more solar and renewable energy driven economy. And you see, we are one of the largest producers of solar energy and wind energy in the world. And that's what our government is focusing on. Our government has also planned to, you see, India is planning on uh, withdrawing all the diesel and petrol driven vehicles from the roads. And we are introducing electric vehicles. And the government is subsidizing the purchase of electric vehicles in India. Same is happening with the energy sector. The government is pushing the companies and industries to use renewable energy, and they are also pushing forward some to use nuclear energy, of course, civil nuclear energy for this purpose. So India is not yet ready to cope with that challenge, but it is an ongoing process, and in the next couple of years, we will be there. Hopefully, I'm optimistic, but anything can happen. Who knows?
Okay. Is the Indian families still very strong? The relationship within people is in a family very traditional, very strong?
Yeah, we are at, yes, of course. Most of the families in India, they are joint families. We don't, you see, I still live with my parents and I'm 22, but I live with them. But if you go to the West, children go out of their homes when they are 20 or 21. So India is a traditional country and people still respect the traditions and people live with their parents till they die. We still have this culture of arranged marriage. Parents choose a bride for their kids, and this is a good thing for our society. We believe.
I agree. I agree. And if I must say, Indian women seems very beautiful.
Thank you.
And probably are good wives and good cooks as well, which is very important.
Oh yeah, my mother is a brilliant cook.
That's good. It's fantastic cuisine in India for sure. Now the reason I ask about the strengths of the family is because every society, every country usually is based on the strengths of the family. If the families are not strong, it's very difficult to build a strong country.
Yeah.
And of course, in difficult times, families can help each other. At least they can help the members of the family. And now, I don't know what is the unemployment rate today and the poverty level. And I presume it changes very much from area to area, from city to city.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So the impact of an economic crisis could be, what would you think would be on the politics of the country? If there was an economic, let's say always this scenario, which we don't hope, of course we don't want that, but if it would be this global economic crisis, how would the politics in India adapt or change? Would you think they would go to more socialist or more or in other directions?
Capitalist, yeah. We will definitely go the capitalist way. You see, as we talk, an ongoing crisis is happening in India. Last year, our GDP was growing at a rate of around 7%. Last year, this month. But this year, our GDP growth has declined to 5%. And our opposition has already started harping on that India's economy is slowing down. And it is definitely slowing down because the global economy is slowing down. India is no exception to it. But India still maintains a high rate of economic growth when compared to other Western nations or developed countries. So if an economic collapse at all falls on India, India will be going the capitalist way because we need structural reforms in our economy. India was a socialist country up till 1991 and it still is. But we are gradually and radically changing our economy and our infrastructure. You see, in India, where government believe the parties that rule the government, they believe that people, if they hand out free money to the people, they'll get votes from the people. That's what's happening elsewhere around the world. But what Indians need is a strong infrastructure-driven economy and a sound energy. You see, in India, sir, what's the problem? The main problem with Indians is our main problem remains in our society. Our governments have never done anything which allows any individual to use the best of his talent. You see, if any individual that is above the ordinary, you see, any individual that is more talented, he prefers going to the West. And our governments have not been able, not a single government has been able to address this problem. Indians that are more talented, that are more economically efficient, who can contribute more to the economy, they prefer going abroad and sending money to their relatives in India rather than working in India, because their experience and expertise is not valued by the government. They still have to pay high taxes when they get in absolutely nothing. People pay taxes so that the government build roads and highways. But even the condition of roads, which is the basic necessity of daily life, is abysmal in India, and it is growing at a very slow pace. So that is the main problem which India faces: the brain drain and infrastructure problem.
Well, if there is an economic crisis across the world, many Indians who live in California or would come back. So you would get back a lot of the brains back home.
To bring them back to India, there needs to be a policy to which they are attracted. You see, if I'm educated, if I'm highly educated and the government does not does not value my contribution to the society, they still levy heavy charges on my income, heavy taxes on my income, and they still are not able to control inflation, then I would prefer to go to America naturally. So that's what's happening, and the government has failed to come up with policies which attract the people working abroad to come to India. But right now, I believe that the government is working on something like subsidizing housing, or subsidizing the education of children of people who work abroad, so that they come to India. And they are also planning on reducing income taxes and giving them other benefits, so that the people who work abroad, they eventually come to India. Yeah,
that's an interesting. I worked with some very, very smart Indian engineers in software in California, and actually when I worked in Africa, there were quite a lot of Indian businesses across Africa. Do you have any idea of how many people who have Indian background live in between UK, America, Africa, across the world? Do you have any idea how many millions of Indians are across the world, outside of India?
Roughly 10 to 12 million Indians live abroad. Okay. Outside India, 10 to 12 million. Yeah,
I would have.
And most
of
them
more.
live in USA.
Okay.
Yeah, most of them live in USA and Western Europe.
Okay, so it's a tiny proportion compared to India.
Yes, absolutely. And some of them also live in the Pacific region, Australia, Malaysia, Indonesia.
By the way, I must say that I have never heard of any problems within that community, which is not something that is true with other communities. So. This is a good compliment for Indians abroad. They behave very well, they work hard, and they never create problems. So, we have to recognize this is a good...
Let me give you a very simple example to, let us give the clear example to your viewers. You must have heard about the London stabbings that took place in London Bridge recently.
Mm-hmm.
The terrorist was a Pakistani, but the policeman who shot the terrorist, he was an Indian.
Well, for sure, some cultures, because India, by the way, we recognize. I know myself. I do recognize India is one of the oldest and most, rich cultures and civilization in the world. It is not, I think that, the British Empire did reduce a lot the economy of India by destroying a lot of these local economies, especially the industry. But India was an incredible civilization thousands of years ago. Of course, it suffered a lot with the Muslim invasion and the Mughals. What is the official number of millions of deaths through the Muslim invasion, by the way?
You see, in India right now, the Muslim population is 14% of our population. And India, basically, the Mughals invaded India in 1400, late 1300s to early 1400s, in the 15th century. And ever after that, India was invaded by the British and colonialism was imposed on us. So this has been going on. And Hindus, you see, the Hindu ideology, it believes in secularism. Secularism and tolerance are synonymous with Hinduism and Buddhism, even with Sikhism. And Sikhs are considered warriors. The Sikhism was created by Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, to protect Hinduism from Islamic invaders.
Mm-hmm.
This is why Sikhism was invented. So Sikhism, Hinduism, and and Buddhism, these three main religions been have born from the Indian subcontinent, and they are very different from the Islamic ideology. You see, Islam, it believes in jihad and expansion. Jihad means that anyone who does not believe in Allah should be massacred, and only those who believe in Allah have the right to live on this earth, which of course they believe that Allah created this earth only for believers, and they call the Christians and all the other non-Muslims kafirs, and kafirs means evil people who does not believe in Allah. So that's what they're doing worldwide. They want to impose this Sharia state worldwide, and we have been resisting it since last 700 to 800 years.
Maybe a last question is, what is the opinion of Indian people about Europeans?
Indian people admire Europeans. We admire Europeans for basically most Indians. They see European in very high regard because of industrialization, of course, the Industrial Revolution. But if the traditional Indians, the people like my grandfather, they do not see Europeans in a very good light, obviously because of the British colonialism. But the perception is changing as more and more Indians get educated, and more Indians and Europeans are connected through social media or government to government relationships. So India and Europe, they are basically allies. India is a NATO ally state, and India and Europe maintain this healthy relationship. India is increasingly buying more and more arms from Europe. India and Europe are signing more deals, more trade deals, and Europe prefers India over any other South Asian country, be it Bangladesh or Pakistan or Sri Lanka, because what they value about India is India's democracy and India's belief in secularism. They can connect with it. Europe also believes in democracy and secularism, and they do not see this thing with China. China is a non-democratic country. So India's democracy is India's biggest strength. If we were to lose our democracy, Europe would see us in the same light as China.
And does this, there is this archaeological, but also now genetic. It's not a theory anymore that Europeans and Indians people share the same origins, the same. We are kind of the same people, a little bit like cousins. But throughout North India and all the way through Europe, we have these Indo-European origins that are common. Are Indian people aware of that? Is it something that is discussed anywhere?
You see, this is the reality, but most people do not want to discuss it because they believe that this comes in the way of their nationalism. You see, the people from North India, they look different from the South Indians.
Mm-hmm.
South Indians have a darker skin tone, and North Indians, I come from North India, we have a lighter skin tone. And it has been proven even in laboratories in the West and even in India, but the government and people do not want to discuss it. They believe that this is an Aryan invasion theory. They discard it as a rubbish, that Aryan invasion is rubbish. But there is substantial evidence to prove that Aryans migrated to India even before Christ, a lot of years ago. Hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. So Aryans, we are basically Aryans. And Aryans had the same, they share the same genes as people of Eastern Europe and North India.
Okay. Interesting. Well, of course, nationalism is, if it holds a country together, can be stronger than the fact that 4,000 years ago there was some connections. If the culture today is more important than the origins 5,000 years ago, of course, no, I agree that. Okay, well, where if people want to learn more about India, besides the tourist websites, anywhere that people can start and look and learn that you can advise?
Basically, they can use just Google, and they can Google anything about India. I would. It's a silly recommendation, but I would recommend them to watch Bollywood movies.
Some are really good.
Yeah, some are good, but most of them do not compare. They are not as good as the Western movies. But yeah, we are still the largest film industry, and we are doing pretty well here.
Okay, so it's a good way to start. Anyway, I thank you very much, and for what it's worth, from me and from my country, Switzerland, we wish the best to India. It's a country that matters a lot in the world, and it's a country I should really visit and take a long time to visit.
Absolutely.
Because it's a big country.
Yeah, you should.
And it's certainly a country we look with highest regards from my part of Europe, at least.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.